During the Second World War, preserves and jams were very severely restricted. You were entitled to 1 jar of jam about once every 2 months. Frankly, I would get through a jar of jam like that in around about a week to 10 days ordinarily. Obviously on a wartime diet we're not able to do that. Now, Britain before the war imported most of her fruit, and government policy during the war was to encourage people to get their vitamins not from fresh fruit but from vegetables, because most of that could be grown within the UK. It was much more difficult to grow all the fruit that we needed, because frankly, although we can grow apples and plums and pears and so on, we couldn't just set up orchards overnight to be able to supply the entire nation with the fresh fruit that they needed. Things such as bananas and lemons we just never saw during the war, and what few oranges were available tended to be used for children. But there were ways around the preserve and jam shortage, and what we're going to do today is show you how to make a mock orange marmalade, which has no orange in at all, but it's made from apples, and you're going to love this one. It's made from carrots as well. Now, the idea here is that you're able to use material that was completely homegrown, locally produced, nothing imported. So, if you want to make a wartime orange marmalade, this is what you have to do. Chop your apple and then put it into a jam pan with water. Well, once it's come up to the boil, leave it to simmer for a couple of hours. After a couple of hours of simmering away, it should have pulped down like this. So at this point, it's ready to be strained. This has been straining for 24 hours, so the liquid is now ready to be measured to go back into the jam pan. Then need to grate a couple of carrots. The grated carrot then needs to be added to the jam pan, and then put a bit of heat under the pan to bring it up to the boil. Now need to measure out a couple of teaspoonfuls of orange flavouring and add them to the pan. Well, when the pan's come up to the boil, it's then time to add the sugar. Now, normally when I make marmalades and jellies, I would use 1 kilo of sugar for every litre of liquid. There's a war on now, so we have to make sure our sugar supplies, our sugar ration goes that little bit further. So I'm going to reduce the amount of sugar going in to 700 grams for every litre of liquid. Right, after it's come back up to the boil, what you need to do is check for its setting point and put a dollop of it on a saucer and then leave it to cool for a bit. And if it develops a skin like this has, then you know it is ready to go into hot sterilised jars. And at this point, I'm just going to, remarkably, the orange flavour has come through. Well, I'm just going to try a slice of bread with a bit of our mock marmalade on there. As you can see, it's been very thinly spread, because we still need to make sure that this jam lasts us quite a while. Actually, that's not bad. The orange flavour does come through, and the consistency is very good. There's a good gel to it as well. So that seems to have worked. So how to make mock marmalade works very well. Now the thing to remember is that those jars that we got That's 2 there, plus a half jar, came from just over £1 of sugar. Now, during the war you could actually increase the amount of sugar you had on your rations if you gave up your preserve rations. Now, you didn't get a great deal extra sugar, but you got a little bit more, and the idea was it was meant to be used to make jams and preserves, and it encouraged people to go out and pick wild berries and so on. And certainly talking to a lot of people who lived through the war years, one of the things they did in the summer and early autumn was to go out and pick lots and lots of berries, particularly blackberries, to boost their jam supply and their fruit supply. Nevertheless, you didn't get that much extra jam, that much extra sugar to make jam, so you still had to make it stretch as much as you can. And I suspect that had I been in real wartime circumstances, I would have put even less sugar than I did into making that marmalade, to make sure that the amount of jam I had increased.